Deep within you, beyond the noise of the world and the labels of diagnoses, lies a silent, wise, and powerful intelligence, the inner physician. It needs no scalpel, no prescription, only your attention, your faith, and your word. This is not an audiobook about external remedies, but a call to awaken your inner power, the power that, according to Joseph Murphy, can regenerate cells, restore organs, and bring the entire body back into harmony. Your body is not your enemy, it is your ally, a perfect messenger that speaks through symptoms and heals in silence when you speak to it with love, conviction, and truth. Prepare for a profound and transformational journey, where you will learn to listen to the whispers of the soul through the body, to communicate with every cell, and to turn your thoughts into medicine. This is a path of self-discovery, but also of conscious miracles, where the invisible becomes tangible and the impossible natural. Your mind is the key, your word is the channel, and your faith, the fire that heals. Welcome to an ancient knowledge wrapped in spiritual science. Begin now. Talk to your body and heal. This book was not written to entertain your mind, but to awaken the healer that sleeps within you. The pages you hold in your hands do not contain theories, speculations, or empty promises. They contain instructions to activate an intelligence that already lives within you, but that you have likely ignored. The intelligence of your cells, your glands, your blood, your heart. Your body is not failing you. It is obeying. It is following to the letter the messages that, unknowingly, you have been giving it for years. Through your thoughts, your words, your silences, your complaints, and your beliefs, this work was born with a single purpose: to show you how to change those internal commands and release a new pattern of life, health, and renewal from the very center of your consciousness. It doesn't matter what diagnosis you've been given. It doesn't matter how long you've been experiencing symptoms or repeating stories of physical limitation. What matters is that from today you will learn to speak to your organs, your tissues, your cells, and not in a symbolic or poetic way, but with precision, with method, with observable results. You will learn to plant words in your subconscious as one plants light in a garden, and to harvest health where once there were only complaints. Each chapter is a conversation with a different part of you. Not forgotten parts, but obedient ones waiting for a new instruction. And you will be the one to give it, because the body listens, because the body remembers, and because the body can also forgive. If you read this book with the same attention you've given your symptoms, something inside you will begin to change. Because this is not just another book. It is a bridge between spirit and flesh, and you are about to cross it. Speak to your body and heal. Based on Joseph Murphy, we've noticed that over 80% of the people who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to continue creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. Your body, your student. Every organ in your body has the ability to learn. This statement, which may sound like poetic license or a philosophical metaphor, is in fact a functional truth of your inner life. Your cells do not only respond to chemical or electrical stimuli, they respond to your thoughts, not through abstract reasoning as a human student would, but through a direct form of vibrational obedience. The whole body is like a silent school, and the mind that inhabits it is its only teacher. Every time you repeat an idea, you reinforce it. Every time you feel an emotion, you plant it. And every time you speak, you issue a command that descends to organs that listen, learn, and act accordingly. This is not superstitious belief, it is mental law in action. Take the case of Mr. Martinez, a middle-aged mechanic who came to me after years of lifting heavy transmissions. His back had become a battlefield. The medical diagnosis was simple: chronic lumbago, likely irreversible without surgery. He didn't want surgery, he wanted to move freely again. When I told him that his spine could learn a new function, he looked at me with doubt. I asked him to consider the following. If it's true that mental repetition can cause ulcers, sweating, hair loss, or increased heart rate, then it must also be true that it can induce order, peace, oxygenation, and flexibility. And if each cell reacts to stress as if receiving hostile instructions, then it can also respond to words of harmony as if they were lessons taught by a loving teacher. I suggested a daily practice. Lying on his back before sleep and upon waking, he was to place a hand on his lower back and repeat in a calm, steady voice, "Spine, learn to be flexible. I'm with you. I lighten you. I bless you. Release. Vibrate in peace." He did this for 40 nights without missing one. By the end of that time, his pain was barely a memory, and his flexibility had returned, not by magical miracle, but by re-education of the tissue. Many readers ask, but how can an organ learn if it doesn't have rational consciousness? The answer lies in understanding that the subconscious, which governs all automatic functions of the body, does possess intelligence. It does not think discursively, it doesn't analyze, compare, or reason. It obeys, and it does so precisely without irony or interpretation. If you say, "This breaks my heart," it registers as a command. If you repeat every morning, "I'm sick of this," your stomach believes it. If you constantly say, "Stress is killing me," your heart prepares to collapse. But if you say, "I am the life of God flowing freely," if you affirm every cell vibrates with perfect health, then the subconscious takes these phrases as directives for reprogramming. This is what we call mental law. What is accepted in the conscious mind when sustained with faith and repeated with emotion descends to the subconscious and becomes manifest. This teaching, which may seem new, has existed since ancient times. In the book of Proverbs it is written, "My son, attend to my words. Incline thine ear unto my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes. Keep them in the midst of thine heart. For they are life unto those that find them, and health to all their flesh." Proverbs 4:20, 22. Notice how the text directly associates words with medicine and mental attention with bodily life. It does not say consult the herbalist, nor visit the temple, but rather attend to my words. This is not metaphor. It is literal instruction on how the word generates substance. Just as you teach a child to walk with patience and repetition, so too can you teach your liver to regenerate, your muscles to regain tone, your pancreas to produce without fear. You speak and the body listens. You think and the body responds. It doesn't always respond instantly because the body's time is not the mind's time, but obedience is guaranteed. It is like planting wheat. You arrive, you wait, you trust. The growth happens. The mistake of modern man is not that he lacks faith, but that his faith is misplaced. He believes more in disease than in life. He repeats with conviction, "I get sick every winter," and he does. He forgets that his word is law to his subconscious, and the subconscious is the foreman of the body. What it is commanded, it executes. If the command changes, the result changes. A woman suffering from arthritis in her hands once came to me distressed. She could no longer sew, cook, or hold a cup without pain. I asked her what she usually said about her hands. She answered without hesitation, "I always say they're my old useless hands." I asked her to change her language, to bless them, to call them young, soft, and obedient. I gave her a simple prayer. "My hands are the hands of God. They obey divine intelligence. They are agile, strong, and joyful." I instructed her to repeat this for 15 minutes upon waking and 15 before bed, holding a glass of water in her hands as she spoke. After 40 days, her mobility had greatly improved. After 90, she had resumed her manual activities. The change was cellular, but it began with the word. This is not about denying symptoms. It is not about pretending you're healthy when you have a fever or swelling. It is about remembering that the body is always listening. And like a good student, it repeats what its teacher teaches. If the teacher says, "You're useless," the body gives up. But if the teacher affirms, "I am life within you," the body responds with vigor. Your organs are not inert pieces of flesh. They are fine receivers of your mental states. Your pancreas is not a deaf machine. It is a faithful servant that adjusts its chemistry according to the mental climate around it. Your heart does not beat at random. It beats according to your view of life. If you live under constant blows, it beats with violence. If you live in joy, it dances in harmony. What are you teaching your body today? To many, this teaching may seem strange because they have been taught to see the body as something separate from the soul. But no such division exists. It is one and the same thing with different degrees of density. Thought is subtle, muscle is dense, but both are manifestations of the same energy. What is believed in the subtle is expressed in the material. The ancient sages understood this. Modern physics confirms it. Every organ vibrates. Every cell emits light. Every tissue has memory, and that memory can be cleansed, nourished, and elevated if the thought that feeds it changes. It is not enough to repeat phrases at random. They must be felt. They must be believed. They must be treated as sacred seeds. Just as a farmer does not throw wheat to the wind and expect a harvest, you cannot throw words without faith and expect healing. The phrases must be sown with intention, watered with emotion, and sustained with conviction. The body does not respond to words you don't feel. It responds to what you deeply believe. That's why Jesus said, "When you pray, believe that you have already received it and it will be yours." He did not say, "When you pray, wait for it to happen someday." He said, "Believe now." For that now is the moment of planting. That now is the root of all regeneration. Your body, dear reader, is not condemned. No matter the diagnosis, age, or family history, your body is a living field awaiting your instructions. Your body is your student. Speak to it, educate it, bless it, and watch how it obeys. Chapter 2, The Chemistry of the Word. Everything you speak leaves a trace in your nervous system. Each word that leaves your lips acts as an electrochemical command directed inward, into your body. This is not a spiritual metaphor, but a physiological reality that medical science has begun to confirm with precision. When you repeat a phrase, your brain translates that message into electrical signals that travel through the autonomic nervous system. These signals affect glandular secretions, the dilation of blood vessels, the contraction of internal organs, and the overall chemistry of your blood. That is why a person who yells in anger can raise their blood pressure in seconds, while someone who repeats a prayer of peace with conviction can immediately slow their heart rate. Every word you use is a command to the secret laboratory of your body. Words are vibrational substances with biochemical impact. What you call just an expression is actually a capsule with real physiological effects. When someone constantly repeats negative phrases like, "This makes me sick," "This nauseates me," or "This gives me chills," they are unknowingly activating the secretion of internal substances that mimic those very reactions. If such expressions become linguistic habits, the body begins to produce those states permanently. The endocrine system becomes unbalanced. The adrenal glands react to verbal stress as if it were a real threat. The liver responds to the language of anger, the stomach to the language of fear, the skin to the language of shame. The entire body translates your inner and outer conversation into biochemistry. This is why Jesus' teaching has clinical value, not just moral, when he says, "By your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned." Matthew 12:37. This statement is not a celestial threat, but a direct observation of how language regulates bodily processes. There is an intimate relationship between thought, word, and glandular secretion. When you think of something beautiful, the brain emits waves that stimulate the production of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. These are known as the happiness hormones. They improve sleep, digestion, immunity, and mental clarity. When you speak words of gratitude, tenderness, or faith, the hypothalamus interprets them as messages of safety. The parasympathetic system is activated, the body relaxes, and healing processes accelerate. Conversely, hostile words, even if unintentional, elevate cortisol, lower immunity, and cause inflammation. In other words, your daily conversation can be medicine or poison, depending on what you choose to say. This truth was evident in the case of a young man named Ricardo, who suffered from chronic gastritis. He had tried various medications without lasting success. During our conversation, I noticed he often said things like, "This blows up my stomach, I swallow my anger, and I can't digest what happens at home." I explained that each of those phrases was like a verbal injection of acid that his body was obeying literally. I asked him to place both hands on his abdomen every time he felt discomfort and slowly say, "My stomach is calm, my digestion is perfect. I peacefully assimilate everything I experience. I release, I flow, I harmonize." At first he thought it was silly, but he agreed to try. 2 weeks later, he reported significant improvement. A month later, he had stopped using antacids. What changed was not his diet, but his internal dialogue. The body did not act on faith, but on physiological obedience. The phrases that once activated emotional toxins were replaced by ones that released healing substances. Language has power because it directs attention, and attention is the channel through which vital energy flows. Where attention goes, blood, oxygenation, and repair follow. If you concentrate your attention through a repeated phrase on a specific organ, that organ reacts. That's why prayers directed at a part of the body produce real changes. What we call a placebo is nothing more than verbalized faith, and that faith acts through chemistry. A man who prays, "My heart beats with perfect rhythm," is sending a signal that the parasympathetic nervous system decodes as an instruction for cardiac coherence. What happens next is not a miracle, but a response of the body's self-regulating system to a psychoverbal command. This teaching does not reject the usefulness of conventional medicine. It complements it. Where the drug cannot reach, the word may. There are cases where medication regulates the symptoms, but the inner word heals the cause. A man can take anxiolytics all his life and never heal, but if he changes his internal discourse, he can regulate his system without chemicals. The word activates neural networks that redirect the body's response. When constructive, the word is regenerative. When repeated with conviction, it is transformative. When spoken with emotion, it is therapeutic. That is why you must guard not only your thoughts but also your speech, because what you say becomes biochemistry, and that biochemistry forms your physical state. A 40-year-old woman told me she suffered from severe migraines. I asked what phrases she used to describe herself. She said, "I'm a ticking time bomb." That phrase, said regularly, had trained her nervous system to react with vascular constriction under any pressure. I asked her to adopt the opposite phrase. "I am an open field at peace. Energy flows through me like a calm river." After 3 weeks, her migraine episodes had reduced. After 2 months, they had disappeared. This was not shallow autosuggestion, but brain chemistry altered by sustained language. Your body is a laboratory, but it does not operate randomly. It responds to the chief chemist, your spoken thoughts. The word is a substance in the form of vibration. The body interprets it. If you give it gentle words, it produces endorphins. If you give it fearful words, it releases adrenaline. You choose the compound through the conversation you have with yourself. This is why prayer is more than a religious act. It is a biochemical act. When you say, "God is within me and His health flows through all of my being," you are changing the chemical composition of your blood, and that blood carries the message to every cell. No organ is deaf to prayer. No tissue is immune to the vibration of your decrees. No system fails to react to your phrases. No molecule in your body is unaware of what you say about yourself. People look for pills to calm them, unaware they are taking words that make them sick. They repeat inherited phrases, unfiltered phrases, words of defeat, depression, or doubt, and then are surprised when their bodies express just that. But if they begin to use new, clean, affirmative phrases focused on health, joy, and freedom, the body would respond just as quickly, but in the opposite direction. Emotional toxins, resentment, rage, fear, are the fuel of disease. Friendly hormones, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, are the nourishment of health. And you decide which path to take by what you put in your mouth. Repeat with me now and do it with intention. My words are medicine. My tongue is an instrument of health. Everything I say becomes good in my body. Make this phrase your daily companion. Say it when you wake. Repeat it as you walk. Use your words as a scalpel of light, a syringe of peace, an infusion of wisdom. You don't need to wait for external miracles. The miracle is in your voice. Chapter 3. Night orders to the subconscious. There is a precise moment each day when the doors of the subconscious open most willingly. It is that intermediate instant when the rational mind begins to relinquish control and conscious vigilance dissolves, just before sleep. There, between the last thought and the first wave of unconsciousness, occurs what New Thought science has called the golden hour of the soul. At that threshold, whatever you plant will bloom. The reason is simple. During sleep, the conscious mind rests, but the subconscious keeps working, exactly with the instructions you left it when you turned off the light. If that instruction was fear, it will continue producing images of danger. If it was fatigue, it will reinforce exhaustion. But if it was a clear command for renewal, regeneration, and health, then the body will receive that directive as law and begin the cellular repair process based on that premise. The secret lies in using that transitional lapse with full intention. The subconscious is not some strange being dwelling deep within. It is the internal department that regulates every vital function. It directs protein synthesis, tissue regeneration, hormonal balance, digestion, respiration, circulation, and sleep itself. It does not pause, it does not get distracted, it does not question. It simply acts. But it needs clear instructions, and those instructions arrive through emotionally charged language. That's why the words you speak as you fall asleep have a special power. They are commands the subconscious will execute without delay, without judgment, without moral evaluation. This is about recognizing that the nighttime mind is not governed by logic. It is governed by the image you give it. And that image translates into chemistry, movement, regeneration or stagnation, depending on the quality of your mental planting. Years ago, a nurse working night shifts wrote to me about her case. She complained of chronic fatigue, constant headaches, and a general decline in her immune system. Despite sleeping long hours during the day, she never felt truly rested. I asked her, "What do you think right before you sleep?" She answered, "That I'm destroyed, that my body can't take it anymore, that I wish I'd die in my sleep." I asked her to change that programming. I suggested a simple, direct prayer to repeat just before closing her eyes for 3 minutes. "Now I sleep in peace. The power of God renews me. Every cell fills with light. Every organ regenerates. I wake up strong, healthy, joyful. So it is." She began the practice without much enthusiasm, but with consistency. After 2 weeks, she reported improvements. After 2 months, she had reduced her medications and her vital energy had returned. Nothing changed outside of her, but everything changed within. She changed the command and the response changed. No complexity is required. No elaborate ritual, no complicated words. A short, coherent phrase said with faith before sleep is enough. The body takes that command, the subconscious translates it into automatic functions, and the night becomes a restoration lab. The ancient Hebrews knew this when they sang their nightly psalms. The Eastern sages taught it as samurai passive. Modern science confirms it by observing how thoughts repeated before sleep alter brain waves, melatonin secretion, and immune processes. This is not witchcraft, it is applied spiritual physiology. What you decree at bedtime, the body will carry out upon waking. It is crucial to understand that nighttime language must be affirmative, present, and positive. You should not say, "I don't want to be sick," because the subconscious does not register negation. If you say, "I don't want pain," what it hears is pain. If you say, "Let me not have a headache tomorrow," it registers headache tomorrow. But if you affirm, "I rest," every part of me relaxes, my head is at peace, the body receives those instructions without distortion. The subconscious is not creative, it is obedient. It does not judge whether a command is wise or foolish. It simply carries it out. That's why it's so vital to give it instructions with clarity, intention, and love. Many patients make the mistake of bringing their worries to bed. They mentally recite their debts, their conflicts, their illnesses, and then wonder why they wake up more tired, irritable, or sick. The answer is clear. Their subconscious worked all night with a blueprint of destruction. It was given a script of chaos, and it faithfully played the part. But if that script is changed, If they consciously decide to train an image of health, order, and life, the body will act according to that vision, and the results are measurable, tangible, verifiable. It doesn't matter whether the reader believes in spiritual things or not. It is enough to understand that your biology obeys sustained emotion. And sustained emotion is born from repeated words, especially before sleep. A 60-year-old woman once confided in me that since she became a widow, she had repeated the phrase, "Why go on?" every night before closing her eyes. That phrase alone was enough to weaken her immune system, cause anemia, loss of appetite, and a constant state of physiological depression. I suggested she not try to change her whole life at once, but only that phrase. I proposed replacing it with, "I go on because there is still light. I go on because life needs me. I go on because I heal every night." At first she cried as she said it, but she repeated it. The subconscious, like an obedient child, did not stop to evaluate the tears. It simply obeyed the phrase. After a few months her vitality returned, and with it a serenity she hadn't felt in years. She told me, "It was as if my body started responding to a voice I didn't know I had." That voice is yours. That voice is what programs your system. That voice, repeated at the right moment, has more effect than 100 pills, because it does not act from the outside, but from within. It does not suppress symptoms, it heals the roots. It does not block signals, it modifies causes. That is why bedtime is sacred, because it is when power transfers from the conscious mind to the great inner healer, and that healer does not work by intuition. It works by command. If the command is life, it works life. If the command is decay, it works decay. So make this moment a ritual of health. Choose your words. Repeat them slowly. Close your eyes with gratitude. Visualize the light moving through your body. Feel as though you are speaking to your nervous system like a friend. Say, "Thank you for this day. Thank you for this body. Thank you for the health that perfects itself as I sleep." And then remain silent. Let the subconscious receive that message like a seed and trust that it will make it grow while you rest. You don't need to know how enzymes act, how tissues repair, or which glands activate. You only need to give the right command. The rest is done by the body. God has designed the human system this way. You plant the word. The subconscious obeys. The body transforms. Chapter 4, The Listening Heart. The heart is not just a simple muscle. It is not a blind pump pushing blood like a soulless machine. It is, above all, a receiver. It is one of the organs most sensitive to your emotional state and sustained thoughts. The heartbeat is neither fixed nor arbitrary. It is an immediate reflection of your mental tone. Every thought you harbor, every emotion you sustain, every word you repeat affects its rhythm. If you live in fear, your heart records it. If you speak in anger, your heart reflects it. If you dwell in joy, your heart translates it into rhythm. The heart doesn't need to understand your ideas to obey them. It interprets them in its own language and responds with acceleration, contraction, or harmony. That's why it is said the heart understands what the tongue does not speak, because the heart is directly connected to the subconscious, and the subconscious responds to the vibrational content of your words and emotions. Over the years, I've received dozens of letters from people who have managed to control or reverse blood pressure disorders, not with pills, but with focused prayer, rhythmic visualization, and specific affirmations. One of the most remarkable cases was that of Mr. Ray, a 68-year-old retired accountant who had suffered from severe hypertension for over a decade. Doctors had prescribed multiple combinations of drugs with inconsistent results and numerous side effects. Speaking with him, I realized he had internalized a common but devastating belief. "My heart is tired of living." That phrase, repeated for years as a complaint or resignation, had been absorbed by his subconscious as an instruction for weariness. I proposed a radically opposite approach. I asked him to begin speaking to his heart, as one would speak to a child, with loving authority and firm tenderness. Every night he was to place a hand over his chest, close his eyes, and repeat for 5 minutes. "My heart beats in peace. My heart has divine rhythm. I hear the melody of life in its pulse, and thank you for your loyalty. Thank you for your strength. We are well. He was also to visualize a metronome ticking softly and steadily, not forcing anything, just contemplating and repeating. After 3 weeks of daily practice, his pressure began to stabilize. After 3 months under medical supervision, he reduced his medication by half. It wasn't magic, it was rhythmic re-education. It was conscious reprogramming. The heart wasn't healed by an external power, but by a new instruction that the subconscious faithfully obeyed. By changing the emotional tone of his relationship with life, his heart stopped struggling and began to dance once more in rhythm. The key here is understanding that the heart doesn't just pump blood, it radiates information. According to contemporary research, the electromagnetic field generated by the heart is much stronger than that of the brain. This field expands beyond the body and acts like an antenna, tuning into emotions, thoughts, and states of consciousness. When you think in anger, that field becomes chaotic. When you think in gratitude, it becomes coherent. This coherence is not abstract. It has real effects on blood pressure, organ oxygenation, digestion, and the immune system. All of this can be altered favorably or unfavorably depending on the emotional pattern you maintain. And emotional patterns are chosen, cultivated, and directed. That's why visualizing the pulse as a divine metronome is so effective, because rhythm, when seen, felt, and named, imposes order on what was once chaos. If each night you take a few minutes to visualize your heart as an instrument tuned by the music of the universe, something within you begins to soften. Chronic tension decreases. Latent aggressiveness is eased. The entire body begins to follow this new beat. This is not fantasy, it is the science of attention. What you observe with love becomes harmonized. What you ignore becomes rigid. What you fear becomes unregulated. That's why we must return to the heart, not as a romantic symbol, but as an educable organ, a faithful student of thought. A woman suffering from tachycardia once confessed to me that whenever she felt nervous, she would whisper to herself, "There's no solution. I can't take it. I'm going to break." Without realizing it, she was hypnotizing her system with collapse commands. Her subconscious accepted them without question and acted accordingly. I suggested she transform that inner dialogue. Each time she felt pressure or fear, she was to place her hand on her chest and say, "I am safe. God is within me. Each beat is love. All is resolved in peace." At first she said it through tears, but she persisted. After a few weeks the episodes diminished. Most revealing of all, she began to trust her own heart like never before. "Now I feel it protects me," she said. And it wasn't a mystical thought. It was a physiological description of a heart that had ceased to be a victim and had become an ally. The most common mistake is to consider the heart a slave to genetics or fate. But the heart is moldable, not in its physical shape, but in its vibrational function. You can teach it to beat with serenity. You can teach it not to react to outside noise. You can teach it to receive joy as medicine. Each time you hear your heartbeat, instead of fearing it, bless it. Each time you feel its acceleration, instead of resisting, speak to it. Say, "I'm with you, we go together, all is well, breathe, flow, let go." The heart doesn't need many words. It only needs sincerity, consistency, and direction. If you give it these, it will respond. Visualize your pulse right now. Close your eyes if you can and observe it from within, not as a biological accident, but as a sacred drum marking your soul's steps upon the earth. Each heartbeat is an affirmation of existence, each pulse a silent proclamation, "I am alive, I am here, I am loving." Make this image your nightly habit. Replace news, fears, and tension with 5 minutes of inner listening. The heart that listens responds. The heart that is loved aligns. The heart that is guided heals. And if you ever doubt its power, remember it was the first organ to form in the womb. It was the first to beat. Before your mind could think, your heart already knew it wanted to live. And that desire is still there, waiting for your instruction. Speak to it, thank it, train it, it will listen. Chapter 5, Lungs of Light. Breathing is the first act you perform at birth and the last you will carry out when leaving this world. Yet most people go through life unaware that breathing is not merely an automatic biological function. It is a direct channel of communication between the mind and the body. Your lungs are not mechanical bellows. They are delicate instruments, exquisitely sensitive to your emotional state and the mental content surrounding them. Every inhalation receives instructions, even if you don't notice, and often those instructions are tainted with anxiety, fear, shame, or pressure. The result is shallow, blocked, and tense breathing. And when the body breathes like that for extended periods, it adapts to that pattern as if it were natural. But what has been learned can be unlearned. What has been deformed by negative suggestion can be re-educated by living words. The lungs listen, and what you say to them, they inhale. That is why this chapter has a single purpose: to show you how to breathe words. This is not a metaphor. It is a technique. Breathing words means synchronizing your breath with an affirmation, an image, or an elevated emotion. It means teaching your lungs that every intake of air is also an intake of life, and that every exhalation is a chance to release not only carbon dioxide, but also toxic thoughts, useless memories, and embedded emotions. Air is not just a gas, it is a vibrational vehicle, and when you breathe with awareness and with word, air becomes medicine. A young woman who had suffered from asthma since adolescence came to me in despair. Her body seemed to resist air. She lived with her inhaler in hand. She slept sitting up. She breathed in fear. I asked her how she spoke to herself during her crises. She replied, "I always say, I'm suffocating, I can't breathe, I can't take it anymore." I explained that this phrase, repeated with the emotion of panic, had taught her nervous system to react by shutting down. It was as if her body said, "If air harms you, let's close the door." I proposed a total shift in narrative. I asked her to begin using a breathing sequence with words. Inhale while mentally saying, "Life enters me." Exhale saying, "I am safe." Inhale, "Light fills me." Exhale, "I release fear." At first, her breath was shaky, but after a few days, her system began to respond. Within a few weeks, she could walk without shortness of breath. Within a month, her attacks were sporadic. Her relationship with air had changed, and with it her physiology. This principle is not foreign to ancient traditions. In Genesis, breath is a symbol of life. Then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Genesis 2:7. From the beginning of the sacred text, breath is the bridge between matter and spirit. When you breathe, you are not just oxygenating tissues. You are renewing your contract with existence. Each inhalation is a silent affirmation. I am alive. Each exhalation can be a conscious release. I let go of what no longer serves. But if your habitual thought is, "The world suffocates me, life is choking me, I can't breathe in peace," then the message that reaches the subconscious is one of closing, tightening, contracting. And the obedient lungs comply, not out of malice, but out of biological fidelity. Therefore, the only way to undo that pattern is to install a new one. And that new pattern must unite breath with word, body with faith, biology with intention. Breathing words is a simple but powerful discipline. It doesn't require equipment, special places, or specific clothing. It only requires willingness. All you need is to dedicate 5 to 10 minutes, morning and night, to sit or lie down, close your eyes, and guide your breath along with selected phrases. These phrases should be affirmative in the present tense and related to openness, protection, and life. You can use formulas like inhale peace, exhale tension, inhale health, exhale fear, inhale light, exhale darkness, inhale God, exhale doubt. When these phrases are repeatedly associated with the breath, the nervous system begins to perceive them as relaxation commands. The body responds by slowing the heart rate, releasing calming hormones, opening bronchi, expanding lung capacity, and most importantly, generating a new bodily memory. A middle-aged man with chronic anxiety episodes confessed that for years he felt as if the air just wouldn't enter properly. He always felt a tightness in his chest with no medical explanation. When I taught him the technique of breathing with words, his initial reaction was skepticism, but he agreed to try without changing anything else. I asked him to repeat a very simple sequence for 10 consecutive days. Inhale, I am at peace. Exhale, I am whole. By day 8, his wife noticed that his nighttime breathing was deeper, his emotional tone calmer, and his posture less tense. By week 3, his anxiety episodes had halved. By week 5, his body had learned a new way to inhabit air. As always, the word had been the medicine. There is no organ that responds more quickly to the effect of thought than the lungs. They are in direct contact with the environment and are affected in milliseconds by any emotional reaction. That is why panic attacks first manifest as breathlessness. When the body receives a threat-related thought, it prepares for fight or flight and alters the breathing rhythm. If that pattern persists, it becomes the norm. But if it is interrupted with awareness, guided breath, and sacred word, the system regulates, and the lungs begin to remember what it is to breathe without fear. Now visualize your lungs as 2 spheres of light. As you inhale, imagine them expanding with golden radiance. As you exhale, visualize them releasing a gray cloud that represents everything you no longer need. Accompany this process with simple phrases. Thank you for the air, thank you for life, and thank you for this moment. You don't need complication, you need continuity. Every time you do this, you are retraining your lungs to associate the act of breathing with joy instead of with struggle or anxiety. And when the mind accepts that air is a gift, the body reacts like a garden receiving rain. It opens, it expands, it blossoms. Your lungs are more than organs. They are temples where the energy that keeps you here flows in and out. If you speak to them, they listen. If you bless them, they open. If you educate them with living word, they return serenity. And don't say again, I can't breathe. Say, divine breath flows in me. Don't repeat, life suffocates me. Proclaim, each breath connects me to the peace of God. Change your language and your breathing will change. Change your breathing and your way of living will change. Chapter 6, the Golden Column. The spine is the physical axis of your body. It is the inner tower upon which the entire structure you call you is built. It is support, it is bridge, it is conduit. But not only on a structural level, it is also so on the energetic, emotional, and mental planes. When someone is said to bend under the pressures of life, the expression is more literal than it seems, because the spine is not indifferent to the inner language. It listens to thoughts, records emotions, and translates every belief into tension, rigidity, or flexibility. When a person lives with guilt, their spine curves forward. When someone is constantly defensive, the upper back tightens. When someone carries burdens, the lumbar zone becomes inflamed. None of this is accidental, it's a functional law. When the subconscious receives a dominant idea, I can't handle this, this is breaking me, I must endure, it communicates it to the nervous system. And the nervous system, a faithful messenger, sends contraction signals to the deep muscles of the back. That's why healing the spine does not begin with a massage or surgery or an external medicine. It begins with a change in word. It begins with a reprogramming of the inner posture. And that posture does not refer to how you place your body, but to how you hold life. If your attitude toward existence is one of weakness, your spine will obey. If your self-image is of a poorly designed structure, your vertebrae will take on that form. But if your thoughts are firm, if your inner voice affirms order, if your belief system is based on dignity and uprightness, then your spine will respond with elevation, openness, and strength, because it too learns, because it too listens, because it, like every organ, is a student of your consciousness. A 45-year-old man, an architect by profession, came to me suffering from lower back pain that had persisted for over 6 years. He had tried physiotherapy, acupuncture, stretching, and corrective exercises, but without lasting success. During our conversation, he said a revealing sentence. "I feel like the whole weight of my family is on my back." I replied, "What you feel, your spine is fulfilling." I offered him an analogy that he, as an architect, would understand better than anyone. Have you ever seen a cathedral whose vault collapses because its mental blueprint was designed to fail? Well, your body is a cathedral, and you are the architect signing the blueprints each day with your thoughts. I then suggested a daily practice in which he would visualize his spine as a solid column of gold, upright, radiant, unshakable. Each morning he was to sit with his back straight, close his eyes and say aloud, "My spine is strong, it is firm, it is flexible. It is the spine of God within me. Nothing bends it, nothing burdens it, nothing crushes it. It is free." And as he said this, he was to imagine each vertebra as a perfectly aligned block of light. After 2 weeks, his pain episodes had significantly diminished. After 2 months, his posture had changed and his mobility improved. Not because gold replaced bone, but because the idea of a divine column replaced the idea of a burden. The body did the rest. Your spine is more than bone and cartilage. It is the central axis of your energy field. Through it flows not only neural impulses, but also mental vibrations. Eastern traditions describe it in terms of energy channels, nadis, while Western science speaks of the spinal cord and the sympathetic nervous system. But the functional truth is the same. Everything that happens in your mind is eventually reflected in your back. Whoever is emotionally bent over will experience it physically too. That is why it is essential to adopt a new mental attitude toward the spine, not as a zone that bears weight, but as the mast of a sacred vessel, as the axis of a noble structure, as the vertical line through which the higher mind descends to inhabit the body. A woman who cared for her sick mother for over a decade told me she began suffering chronic pain in her sacral and cervical regions. Her language was revealing. "I am everyone's support. No one helps me. This is breaking me in two." When I asked her what image she had of her body, she described it as a worn-out wooden beam. I proposed she replace that image with another, a column of white marble, unbreakable because it does not allow itself to be invaded. I asked her to visualize her spine every night before bed as a smooth, shining vertical column upon which the dome of the divine temple rests, and to repeat a simple phrase. "I release every burden that is not mine. My spine is clean, free, straight. The Holy Spirit holds me from within." After 40 days, her symptoms significantly diminished. Her body no longer needed to carry because her mind had stopped signing that contract. It is very common for people to assume emotional responsibilities that do not belong to them, and the subconscious translates that assumption into spasms, rigidity, pinched nerves. The back never fails without cause. When the soul tenses, the back shows it. When the consciousness gives up, posture collapses. But the opposite is also true. When the mind asserts itself, when the soul is liberated, the back regains its dignity. And that dignity does not come from an external therapist, but from an internal affirmation. The spine listens when you speak to it. The spine aligns when you feel you have the right to stand tall. The spine heals when you decide to walk without the weight of others' ideas. Now visualize your spine as a column of gold, not as a decorative symbol, but as a real, living, vibrant structure. Feel that each vertebra is a letter in the alphabet of your life. Feel that each disc is a pause filled with intention. Feel that each segment is upheld by divine wisdom, and speak clearly. "I do not carry. I do not endure. I do not bend. I am living uprightness. I am sacred column." This kind of prayer, when repeated daily with visualization and bodily presence, has remarkable effects on posture, pain, inflammation, and mobility, because the spine is not a slave to age, it is a slave to the image you hold of it. And you can change that image at any moment. Many people live waiting for their body to straighten without changing the mental blueprint that bends it. But that is as absurd as hoping a crooked house will stand upright without touching the foundation. The good news is that your foundation can be rebuilt, with new thought, with affirmative word, with elevated vision. Gold does not break, and you have the right to live with a column of gold. Chapter 7. Skin, Mirror of the Soul. The skin is the largest organ of your body. It is the physical boundary between you and the world, the living border that translates the inner into the outer and vice versa. Its sensitivity is not limited to touch. It also reflects your emotions, your stress levels, your self-image. Many people believe that skin disorders are merely matters of hygiene or genetics, but that belief overlooks a fundamental truth, one that mental practice has demonstrated again and again. The skin responds to the content of the soul, not symbolically, but as a literal and physiological reaction. Eczema, hives, rashes, psoriasis, chronic acne, rosacea. These may all have hidden roots in emotional instructions that the subconscious translates into dermatological signals. The skin, more than a barrier, is a screen, and on it the subconscious projects its films. It's important to understand that the subconscious does not hide its conflicts. It expresses them. If it cannot do so through words, it will use images, dreams, pain, or functional illness. In the case of the skin, that expression is often related to themes of identity, contact, rejection, or self-perception. A person who does not feel comfortable in their own skin will often show symptoms on it. Someone who feels attacked, dirty, exposed, or unworthy of being seen may develop conditions that quite literally fulfill those sensations. The body does not create arbitrary symbols. It creates reactions faithful to the dominant beliefs. That is why the skin can be considered the surface where consciousness becomes visible. The skin listens to what you think of yourself, and it obeys. I recall the case of a young woman who had suffered from psoriasis since she was 13. Her skin peeled in reddish plaques, especially on her arms and neck. She had been treated with creams, steroids, ultraviolet light, and special diets. There were temporary improvements, but the outbreaks always returned. When I asked her what she felt when she looked in the mirror, she didn't hesitate. Repulsion. I asked her to describe in detail what her inner dialogue sounded like upon waking. She replied, "I think my body is disgusting, that no one will love me, that I look sick." I pointed out that her subconscious was projecting that very script onto her skin, the mental movie being played on the most visible organ. Her body wasn't betraying her, it was following a program. I suggested a daily practice of visualization and corrective self-image. Every morning she was to look in the mirror, place her hands on the affected areas, and repeat, "This skin is sacred, this skin is clean, this skin is my divine garment. Only light lives here. I am pure, I am worthy, I am new." I also asked her to visualize her skin as a white fabric, smooth, soft, absorbing golden light with every breath. At first it was hard for her. She repeated the phrases without believing them, but the daily repetition paired with the image began to influence her emotional system, and as her emotional system calmed, it freed the body from the inflammatory pattern. After 3 months, the outbreaks had reduced by 80%. It wasn't denial, it was substitution. Her subconscious received a new film and projected it onto her skin. Conventional medicine now acknowledges that the skin responds to stress, that it becomes inflamed when the sympathetic nervous system is overactivated, that it releases histamine in response to threatening thoughts. But the next step is understanding that inner language can alter this reaction, not with hollow phrases, but with sustained affirmations that convey a different message. When thought changes, the neuroendocrine system responds, and when that system relaxes, the skin reflects it through softness, renewal, and visible healing. Epidermal cells are constantly renewing, but the pattern by which they do so depends on the information they receive, and that information is largely mental. A middle-aged woman with eczema on her hands and face told me that every time she had to express her opinion, new lesions would appear. As we explored further, we discovered that since childhood, she had been taught that speaking was dangerous, that being visible was inappropriate, that expressing herself was indecent. That belief, sustained for years, had created a subconscious association between visibility and punishment. Her skin reacted like an alarm. I'm being seen, so I must cover up. I proposed a corrective prayer directed to the subconscious. I am safe when I show myself. My face is peace. My skin shines with truth. I have nothing to hide. I am seen with love. Along with this, she was to practice calm breathing in front of the mirror while visualizing her face bathed in white light, as if wrapped in a veil of purity. Within a few weeks, her confidence grew, and her skin responded. Her body no longer needed to protect her because the inner danger was gone. This doesn't mean you should abandon medical care. It means you can add a higher cause, that you can complement physical treatments with a profound mental shift. Because if you don't correct the previous film, the body will keep projecting the same one over and over. But if you change the story, if you introduce a new image, a new word, a new perception, then the skin reflects it, like a canvas, beginning to cleanse itself. The skin does not resist, it simply waits for a new command. Try this simple experiment. Every time you wash your face or hands or apply a cream, repeat a short affirmation. I am clean inside. This skin is renewing. This skin reflects the peace of my soul. Don't say it mechanically. Feel that you're speaking to each cell, that you're erasing the old message, that you're programming a new story. Repeat it for several days without stressing over immediate results. The subconscious needs continuity, not pressure. Once it sees that the new image is consistent, it will begin to replace the old one, not out of whim, but out of obedience. The skin is the place where the soul wants to say something. If you listen, it will reveal its message, and if you change what is said internally, it will change what is shown externally. There is no mystery here, there is a law, and that law is called correspondence. What is within becomes without. What is hidden is revealed. What is feared is expressed. What is loved is healed. That is why your skin deserves a new movie, a new script, a new light. Chapter 8. Living blood, living thought. Blood is more than a vital fluid. It is the messenger of consciousness. It transports oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and emotions. It is the inner river that runs through all your organs, carrying not only biochemical elements, but also the vibrational tone of your belief system. What you think repeatedly affects your blood pressure. What you feel consistently alters the viscosity, speed, and distribution of your blood. You cannot separate the circulatory system from the mind, for every heartbeat is modulated by the content of your thoughts. Functionally, blood is not neutral. It responds to the ongoing mental dialogue. And the subconscious, when perceiving ideas of contraction, fear, or repression, transmits those signals to the vessels, causing narrowing, spasms, and disorders later labeled as hypertension, poor circulation, varicose veins, or arrhythmias. But it all began with an instruction, and every instruction can be replaced by another. Blood needs freedom, it needs space, direction, and rhythm. When you live trapped in rigid thought patterns, repressed emotions, or unprocessed guilt, your circulation reflects it. The flow diminishes, vitality fades, the feeling of fatigue increases, not because the body has aged, but because the mind has restricted its energy. Many people who suffer from cold feet, numbness, or irregular pressure don't need a medication as much as they need internal re-education. Because their blood hasn't stopped working, it has stopped receiving the right command. That command is flow freely, distribute with joy, nourish without resistance. If the subconscious receives that instruction with conviction, the arteries and veins will obey, because blood listens too. A 50-year-old office worker came to me with constant fatigue, heaviness in her legs, and intermittent headaches. Her medical exams showed no major disease, yet her energy was depleted. As we talked, I noticed a strong mental pattern. She constantly spoke in terms of stagnation. Nothing moves forward. My life is stuck. I feel trapped. I pointed out that her language was identical to the symptoms her blood was showing. Her circulatory system wasn't flowing because her mind wasn't flowing. So I offered her a targeted affirmation. My blood is a living river. My life moves. I flow, I circulate, I advance. She was to repeat this 3 times a day, accompanied by at least a 10-minute walk, while visualizing her body as a system of red rivers filled with light, bringing joy to every cell. Within weeks, her vitality began to return, not because the physical movement was magical, but because she was now responding to a liberating mental image. It is crucial to understand that blood circulation is directly related to the circulation of ideas. When your mind opens to newness, when you receive positive thoughts with receptivity, your body mirrors that openness with vascular expansion. But when your mind closes, when you cling to old ways of thinking, when you hold on to unspoken emotions for years, blood reacts like a highway in a traffic jam. There's congestion, pressure, accumulation. That's why many cardiovascular diseases begin long before they appear clinically. They begin when the soul stops moving. But that rigidity can be reversed. When thought becomes flexible, flow returns. When resentment is released, blood flows more lightly. When control is surrendered, pressure drops, not because of physical effort, but because the subconscious is no longer obeying a command of tension. A man diagnosed with mild hypertension once confided that he constantly felt the need to control everything. That mindset created a permanent state of hyper-alertness. His heart beat under the command of vigilance. His blood moved under the command of demand. I gave him a simple decree. My blood flows with confidence. Nothing threatens me. Divine order flows through me. With this and a visualization of his body as a luminous network irrigated by a serene red current, a new emotional disposition began to take root, and with it his blood pressure gradually lowered. It wasn't hypnosis, it was liberation. The subconscious received a higher instruction and the body obeyed. Again, we see that the body does not act randomly. Blood doesn't thicken without cause. It doesn't stop on its own. It doesn't poison itself by choice. It does so in response to information it receives day after day from the nervous and endocrine systems, both of which are directed by your mind. If you constantly say, "This makes me angry, it boils my blood. I can't take this anymore," you are programming your system to react with struggle, acidity, and tension. But if instead you begin to declare, "My blood is liquid peace. I am a channel of well-being. Everything flows in me with order," then the pattern changes. Not because the phrase has magic power, but because it aligns with a higher mental state, and the subconscious always responds to the strongest coherence. You can do this exercise any time during the day. Close your eyes for 3 minutes and visualize your blood as a bright red river flowing through your entire body. Imagine it being born in your heart like a pure spring and spreading like a dance, bringing nourishment, oxygen, and joy to every organ. As you do this, silently repeat, "I unleash the red current. Nothing is stagnant. Everything moves. I am life in circulation." By doing so, you are giving a direct command to your subconscious. You are replacing years of closed language with an image of freedom. You are programming not only your blood, but your soul to flow. Your blood is alive. Your thoughts are too. And when both align in harmony, health is not far behind. Remember this. Mental stagnation produces biological stagnation. The soul's circulation produces physical circulation. The secret lies in commanding, visualizing, and declaring. Blood, like every organ, does not argue. It listens, and if you speak with clarity, with truth, and with perseverance, it will respond. Chapter 9, Glandular, Your Inner Fortune. Every gland in your body is a broadcasting station. They do not work in isolation, nor are they simple chemical generators operating by reflex. They function as translators of your inner state. The thyroid, the adrenals, the pituitary, the pancreas, the thymus, the gonads, all of them listen, register, and obey the emotional and mental vibration you consistently sustain. They are not autonomous entities. They are obedient hormone secretors that respond to the climate your mind establishes. That is why you can consider them your invisible allies or your exhausted servants, depending on the message you send them daily. Their work is sacred. They not only regulate metabolism, energy, or stress adaptation, but also physically manifest what you believe to be possible spiritually. The body adapts to the dominant belief, and the glands, being at the center of that adaptive system, respond precisely to the content of your inner decrees. Let's begin with the thyroid. This gland, located at the base of the neck, regulates the speed at which your body uses energy. But symbolically and functionally, it is also tied to your right to express yourself, to be seen, to move freely through the world. Many people with chronic hypothyroidism share an emotional pattern. They were silenced, ignored, or learned to stay quiet in order to survive. On the other hand, those with hyperthyroidism often experience mental overexcitation, uncontrollable thoughts, a constant need to prove their worth, and anxiety around performance. In both cases, the gland follows the emotional command. It does not fail without reason, it obeys. A 38-year-old woman diagnosed with autoimmune hypothyroidism shared with me that from childhood she had been taught not to bother others, not to talk too much, not to ask for too much. Her voice was soft, her pace of life slow, her fatigue constant. I explained that her gland had learned to obey a decree. Do not move, do not exist too much, do not take up space, and that it was time to replace it with a new one. I suggested a specific affirmation. My voice is valid, my body is worthy of energy. Divine wisdom lovingly regulates my thyroid. I asked her to repeat this phrase aloud each morning with her hand over her throat while breathing deeply and visualizing a bright blue light filling the area. After 40 days, her hormone levels had improved noticeably because the body, as always, had received a new instruction and responded accordingly. The adrenal glands, meanwhile, are responsible for regulating your stress response. Located atop the kidneys, they secrete cortisol, adrenaline, and other substances that enable you to react to danger. But when you live in a constant state of alarm, sustaining thoughts of chronic worry, guilt, or negative anticipation, these glands never rest. They begin producing hormones as if you were under perpetual attack. The result is fatigue, insomnia, nervousness, poor digestion, and in advanced cases, total exhaustion. This is known as adrenal fatigue. It may not always show up in standard medical tests, but the body feels it, because the body does not lie. A man with chronic fatigue syndrome told me that every morning upon waking, he felt like he had to fight to survive. His typical phrase was, "I have to endure, no matter what it takes." I asked him, "What if you didn't have to fight?" He looked at me in confusion. I offered him a healing prayer for his overburdened glands. "I am safe. Nothing is chasing me. Divine energy restores me. My glands rest and harmonize." He was to repeat this upon waking at midday and before bed, while placing both hands over his lower back. This action, combined with daily moments of silence, began to shift his state. After 2 months, his energy level had doubled, because when the subconscious receives the command "enough with the war," the body suspends the emergency response and returns to balance. You do not need to know the full physiology to begin healing. What you need to know is this: your glands obey. They do not ask questions. They do not seek explanations. They receive the dominant message, whether spoken aloud or silently in act. If that message is "I'm alone," the adrenals respond with hypervigilance. If it is "I don't have time," the thyroid speeds up. If it is "life overwhelms me," the pancreas loses its rhythm. But if you change that narrative, if you begin to declare, "I am harmony, time is enough for me, life takes care of me," then your entire hormonal system begins to reorganize, because your biology does not act randomly, it acts by instruction, and your voice is the source of that instruction. Now try this exercise. Close your eyes for 1 minute. Place your right hand over your neck and your left hand over your lower back. Breathe slowly. Feel as though you are speaking directly to your endocrine system and mentally repeat, "Thank you, thyroid, for wisely dosing my energy. Thank you, adrenals, for protecting me and resting when danger is gone. I do not burn out. I renew myself. I am an inexhaustible source." Repeat this daily for at least 20 days without expecting immediate results. Consistency is the signal your subconscious recognizes as truth. A phrase said once without emotion is not enough, but a phrase repeated with conviction every day is a command, and the body, always loyal, will execute it. Your glands are the hidden treasure of your body. They are your inner fortune. Their proper function determines not only your health, but your vitality, your mood, your creativity, your life force. And that function depends greatly on what you choose to decree as normal. If you decree chaos, they work in emergency mode. If you decree peace, they work in balance. If you decree divine order, they align with the original design of your being, because they were created to sustain you, not to destroy you. And they are waiting for you to tell them clearly and fearlessly what kind of life you are going to live from now on. Chapter 10. Silence. Pain with the inner voice. Pain is not an autonomous force, it is a signal. It is the body's message that says, something is out of order. But like any message, it can be understood, moderated, and re-educated. The common mistake is to believe that pain is a sentence that must be obeyed passively or with fear. However, multiple clinical cases and documented experiences show that physical pain can be reduced, neutralized, and even silenced through the precise use of attention, word, and subconscious instruction. This does not mean denying pain. It means understanding that its intensity is not fixed, and that the subconscious, when well trained, can function as a mental anesthesia center that blocks or modulates the perception of stimuli without necessarily relying on pharmaceuticals. The key lies in establishing a relationship of mastery, not submission, with the signals the body emits. Your nervous system faithfully responds to the orders it receives from the subconscious. If it believes a procedure will be painful, it will increase sensitivity. If it believes it is safe, it will reduce the perception of pain. This is not esoteric theory, it is applied physiology. Doctors, dentists, and surgeons have documented numerous cases where, through guided management, hypnosis, or conscious training, patients have undergone tooth extractions, minor surgeries, or invasive procedures without the use of chemical anesthesia. In all these cases, the pattern is the same. The patient replaces fear with a clear mental instruction, sustained by a stable emotional image. The body, consequently, inhibits pain signals, releases endorphins, and allows the procedure to unfold without suffering. This has been observed in hospitals, on battlefields, in tribes without access to modern medicine, and also in the quiet rooms of those who practice scientific prayer. A young woman who needed to have 3 wisdom teeth extracted asked me for help because she wanted to avoid traditional anesthesia due to a previous severe allergic reaction. I offered her a method of mental reprogramming to begin 5 days before the procedure. Each night for 20 minutes, she had to lie down, close her eyes, place her attention on her jaw, and repeat, "This area is asleep. There is no pain, only pressure. I am safe. All is peace." At the same time, she was to visualize the affected area covered by a veil of white light, as if a cloud of divine anesthesia were wrapping around her nerves. During the procedure, she silently repeated the same affirmation. She felt nothing more than slight pressure. The body obeyed the instruction, as it always does when the message is clear and the emotion is stable. It was not blind autosuggestion. It was functional instruction to the subconscious. This principle applies not only to medical procedures, but to any type of acute pain. When the body emits a pain signal, it does so because it has been trained to react to certain stimuli as threats. But if the stimulus is accompanied by an inner voice that transmits safety, understanding, and mastery, the nervous system changes its response. This has even been observed in young children who, when receiving calming words from authority figures, reduce their perception of pain without the need for pharmaceutical intervention. The secret lies in the authority of the message. If you speak to your body as a victim, the body tenses. But if you speak to it as a guide, as a protector, as an internal adult giving a precise command, the body cooperates. And that cooperation translates into reduced pain. A reader wrote to me from Argentina explaining how he applied this technique during a neuralgia crisis that had left him immobile for hours. Instead of panicking or seeking sedatives, he sat down, breathed deeply, and began to repeat, "This body is mine. This signal softens. This area is calm. All is well." For half an hour he held that repetition without moving, visualizing the affected area as a region wrapped in icy light. Within minutes the pain began to decrease. It did not disappear completely, but it lessened enough to allow him to move, relax, and fall asleep. The next day, the episode did not return, not because the technique is magical, but because the mind is more powerful than any sensory threshold when trained. This kind of training is not new. Tibetan monks use it in rituals of bodily discipline. Yogis have taught it for centuries. New Thought affirms it with direct language. The mind governs sensation. It is not about denying real pain, but moderating its intensity through the power of internal word. Each time you repeat a calming phrase, you are lowering the emotional voltage that amplifies the pain signal. You are activating the parasympathetic system. You are signaling to the brain that there is no threat. And when the brain believes that, the entire body responds with relaxation, natural analgesia, and cooperation. You can begin today with a simple training protocol. Every time you feel discomfort, however small, instead of exaggerating it with phrases like, "This is going to kill me," "I can't take it," "It's unbearable," stop and declare, "I am safe. The sensation is easing. I am in control. Divine power numbs this area." Then breathe. Visualize light wrapping around the affected area and hold that image for several minutes. This sustained repetition day after day becomes a new program, and the subconscious, upon receiving it, will act on your neurotransmitters as if you had taken a sedative. Only this time, the sedative is produced by your own internal laboratory. This is not about assuming you will never need medical help. It is about recognizing that within you lies a mechanism that can cooperate with any treatment, enhance any intervention, and reduce any suffering if you assume the role of instructor. Pain is part of the body's warning system, but it is not invincible. It is not inevitable. It is not an enemy. It is a signal. And you, through the inner voice, can dialogue with it, negotiate its intensity, and redirect its manifestation. Your mind has that power. Your word is the key, and the silence of pain begins when you speak with truth, without fear, and with mastery. Chapter 11. The Law of Somatic Forgiveness. Forgiveness is not merely a moral action or a lofty spiritual attitude. It is, above all, a therapeutic function with immediate physical repercussions. The human body reacts intensely to unresolved emotions, and resentment is among the most harmful of them. Not because it is a sin in the traditional religious sense, but because it creates a toxic emotional environment that, when sustained, disrupts organic systems. Resentment does not remain in the mind. It descends, circulates through the blood, accumulates in tissues, anchors in organs, and often manifests as gastric ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic inflammation, constant muscle tension, migraines, or autoimmune conditions. The body does not forget what the mind refuses to release. That is why we must speak of forgiveness as a somatic process. When the subconscious receives the command to not forget, not release, not forgive, it interprets that you must continue defending a wound, and the most basic defense mechanism is inflammation. This is why some people sustain localized inflammation for years without a clear medical explanation, while harboring old grudges against parents, former partners, bosses, or even against themselves. What we call emotional pain eventually becomes physical pain because the body seeks an outlet that the mind denies, and that outlet is often a symptom. Just as an unresolved mind becomes a repetitive inner dialogue, an unforgiven body becomes an inflamed organ, an injured mucosa, a blocked system. The body longs for peace but cannot attain it if you insist on holding war within. I recall the case of a 43-year-old sales manager who suffered from recurrent gastric ulcers. His diet was sound. He didn't smoke or drink excessively. He had tried various treatments that brought temporary relief, but the symptom always returned. Through conversation, we discovered he had been carrying deep resentment against his father for over a decade, stemming from verbal humiliation during his teenage years. He said, "I got over it, it doesn't affect me anymore." But his body disagreed. His body kept manifesting that wound in the gastric tissue because the subconscious doesn't erase information just because you've rationalized it. It needs a real act of release. I proposed a somatic forgiveness exercise. Every night he was to lie down, place his hand on his stomach, and repeat, I release this burden. I forgive. I let go. This ulcer is the echo of a memory I no longer need. Love enters now. The fire is extinguished. Peace takes its place. He was to repeat this for 10 minutes while visualizing a cascade of cool light descending from his throat to his stomach. After 20 days, his episodes of acidity diminished. By day 40, clinical studies showed significant improvement. His inner voice had replaced resentment with understanding, and his obedient body stopped protecting him through inflammation. This principle is not new. Jesus said, "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." Matthew 6:12. When translated into the language of mental law, this implies that forgiveness is not an act we perform for others. It is a decision that frees us from the physiological consequences of resentment. A mind that harbors grudges activates the sympathetic nervous system, speeds up the heartbeat, disrupts digestion, weakens immunity, and blocks regeneration. But a forgiving mind reduces tension, harmonizes breathing, releases serotonin, relaxes the organs, and allows the body to return to its original functions. It is not about justifying injustice. It is about stopping the inner fuel of harm. Somatic forgiveness can be practiced even when not felt spontaneously. The act of verbally declaring, "I forgive you, I forgive myself, all is at peace," even if not accompanied by immediate emotion, is enough for the subconscious to begin working in that direction, because the subconscious responds to sustained instruction, not fleeting feelings. If you repeat a forgiveness prayer daily, your nervous system will interpret the sequence as a new command and will adjust your organic processes accordingly. You will stop producing cortisol from chronic anger. Your mucous membranes will begin producing protective substances again. Inflammation will decrease. The immune system will realign, not by magic, but by biological obedience to a new mental pattern. A woman with chronic joint inflammation once confided that she had harbored suppressed anger toward herself for years over an abortion she had never revealed to her family. No one was judging her anymore, except herself. I suggested she begin a somatic self-liberation protocol. Every morning upon waking, she was to place her hands on her knees and repeat, "I forgive you, it's over. The past holds no power, the body is innocent. Only love remains here." She began this process in tears. Her body did not forget what had been lived, but it stopped punishing itself. Inflammation subsided, her mobility improved, her sleep regulated, and with it came the certainty that forgiveness is much more than a moral act. It is a physiological act. It is not about finding someone to blame. It is about understanding that every sustained negative emotion has a biological price, and that forgiveness does not free others. It frees you. It frees your glands, your tissues, your nervous system, your cells from a burden they were never meant to carry. If you do not forgive, the body becomes a battlefield. If you forgive, it becomes a temple of harmony. Do this exercise right now. Close your eyes. Place your hands where you feel the most tension, your stomach, neck, chest, back, wherever, and repeat, "I release this. I forgive myself. This part of my body no longer needs to inflame to speak. I listen. I release. I heal." Repeat this exercise for 7 consecutive days. Do not wait to feel forgiveness as an emotion. Focus on declaring it as an instruction. The subconscious does not need enthusiasm. It needs direction. And remember, peace is not a feeling that appears, it is a state that is commanded. And your body is waiting for that command. Chapter 12, Happy Cells, Long Life. The human body is a collection of systems, but beyond systems, it is a community. And that community is made up of trillions of microscopic individuals called cells. Each one has a function, a memory, and a capacity to respond. They are not passive parts of a mechanism. They are living units that cooperate with each other according to the information they receive. That information doesn't come only from the physical environment or nutrients. It also, and even more powerfully, comes from your constant thoughts. Every cell responds to what you hold as true. Therefore, To speak of rejuvenation is not to speak of magical formulas or external interventions, but of changing the quality of communication between your mind and your body. When the cells feel valued, respected, loved, and wisely guided, they begin to function more efficiently. When they receive rejection, hatred, neglect, or contradictory instructions, they lose rhythm, become disorganized, and accelerate their wear. This is not a myth. It is the foundation of conscious biology. Your cells do not distinguish between an order spoken aloud and a belief silently held. Both are instructions. Both shape the internal environment. So when you repeatedly think, "I am aging," "I feel worse every day, my body no longer responds," what you are doing is transmitting to that trillion invisible workers a directive of deterioration, and they, as loyal servants, obey. They begin to replicate weaker patterns, conserve less energy, and activate degeneration genes. But if you reverse that mental sequence, if you replace that pattern with a new one based on gratitude, affirmation, and a regenerative vision, then those same cells will receive a new signal and their behavior will change. Rejuvenation does not mean going back to a previous biological age. It means giving your cells an environment in which to work in peace, with energy, and with purpose. And that environment is created by you, with every word, every image, every act of inner attention. For years, I've recommended a 30-day protocol that has helped thousands of readers restore functions, improve overall tone, and in many cases, reverse symptoms associated with cellular wear. This protocol does not replace medical treatments, but it does complement them at the root, because it works on the deepest cause of premature aging, emotional disorder turned into toxic cellular inflammation. The proposal is simple. For 30 days, you must establish a daily routine of cellular communication, 3 times a day, upon waking, at midday, and before sleeping. You will take a moment to speak to your body with a clear and specific voice, not symbolically but literally, because your cells understand the language of directed speech, and because they are waiting to hear something from you other than complaints, fatigue, and resignation. Here is the core sequence of the protocol, which you must repeat 3 times a day, preferably aloud. Cells of my body, I bless you. Cells of my body, I release you from the past. Each cell is light, each cell is life. The power of God flows in you. You are renewed, restored, and rejoicing. I am eternal youth in action. I am divine intelligence organizing all. Thank you for your work, and thank you for your loyalty. I commit to giving you thoughts of love, images of peace, and words of truth. From now on, you respond only to good. So it is, and so it shall be. While repeating this prayer, you must visualize your body as a radiant network of cellular light, where each point glows with gratitude. If you can, place your hands on your chest, abdomen, or any area where you feel tension or fatigue. Breathe slowly. Don't try to force sensations. Let daily repetition do the work. After the 7th day, you will begin to feel lighter. After day 15, many report improved sleep quality, mood, and digestion. By day 30, most people experience a new sense of vitality that doesn't come from external change, but from sustained reprogramming. It is essential to understand that this work is not about denying age or pretending vain illusions. It is about remembering that each cell has intelligence, and that intelligence responds to the source you choose to install as the pattern. If you decide to install that aging is inevitable, that deterioration is normal, that tiredness is destiny, then so it shall be. But if you choose to install that divine order is present, that renewal is possible, that energy can be restored, then that too shall be fulfilled. Because the body reflects the inner command, and that command can be changed at any moment by anyone willing to take responsibility. A 64-year-old man wrote to me after completing this program. He said, "I haven't grown wings, nor am I 30 again, but my doctors don't understand how my test results improved so much. The only thing I did differently was thank my cells 3 times a day. I needed nothing more. I had changed the source of information. I replaced neglect with direction. I exchanged resignation for living communication, and the body, as always, obeyed." You don't need to understand every metabolic pathway to speak to your cells. You need respect, consistency, and clarity. You don't need to believe in magic. You need to repeat what is true, that every cell is sensitive, that every word leaves a mark, that every sustained image alters biological behavior. Rejuvenation is not fantasy, if you understand it as the restoration of natural order. And that natural order is activated by conscious thought, directed word, and sustained gratitude. Do it for 30 days, then observe. Don't stop because you don't see immediate results. Don't interrupt because of lack of sensation. The subconscious works deep within, and what today feels like empty repetition, tomorrow will become cellular regeneration. Remember, faith is not always felt. Sometimes it only needs to be acted upon. And when you act as if renewal were possible, the body recognizes it as truth. Because the body was not designed for decay. It was designed to regenerate. If you give the command, then you can give it starting now. Amen.